Hi everyone, my name's Caroline. I'm going to be chairing or hosting this session, and with us of course we have the two editors of the Australian Law Librarian, so Robin Gardner and Fiona McDowell. The way that we're going to run this session is basically Robin, Fiona and I are going to have a bit of a chat to start with and go through some questions, and then towards the end I'll give you a chance of course to ask any questions if you do have any, so please you know, keep them in your head until then, and we can interrogate Robin and Fiona. So to start off, Robin and Fiona, I wanted to ask, what is the role actually of an editor?
Hi everyone, it's Robin speaking. The role of the editor of this journal is probably different to the role of editors with a lot of other journals, but basically as co-editors we do absolutely everything from sourcing content to the copy editing part, which is what editors would normally do, to organising the typesetting, the printing and the distribution. We obviously don't do that ourselves, but we also get the content to Hind to put up online. We also report to the board because the journal is now officially part of the ALA National Board, the ALA National, sorry. So we report to the board on a monthly basis, and we also are responsible for keeping the website up to date. We also do all the business, back-end business stuff to do with the journal, including invoicing and getting advertising and all of that kind of thing as well.
So that sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and I think it's imperative. We think it's imperative that we have two people to do that. The journal has changed significantly in the last few years regarding the people that are involved in it. There used to be an editorial board, and Larissa was on that. She's listening in, I think. So she might be able to talk more later about what her role was on the editorial board. But all of that, there used to be an editorial board and a business manager. And the business manager did all the paying of invoices and getting invoices and that kind of thing paid. So since we've taken over, the editorial board had kind of died a while before that, and we don't think we actually need that, but we couldn't do it. We couldn't do all the business side of it if we didn't have two of us doing it. So yes, it is a lot of work, but with two of us, it's totally achievable.
Absolutely. So how long would you say it would take to prepare each issue? Is it 4 issues a year? Is that right?
Yeah, 4 issues a year. Fiona, do you want to answer that one?
Yep, sure. So it can take a few months to actually get an issue from start to finish. We start by you know, planning what the issue is going to be about, if there's going to be a particular theme, or if we've got some articles lined up already. Then we go about tapping people on the shoulder, putting out requests for articles or information, contacting maybe the vendors if they want to contribute something, to gather all the content that we need for an issue, and that can obviously take a while. We try and give people as much notice as possible if we ask them to write something, but that's not always the case that we can. And once we get in all of the articles, we do a proofread or a copy edit of them, as Robin said, just to check through spelling, make sure that it makes sense and all those kind of things. And again, that's quite time consuming. Then after that, we put the content together. We send it off to the typesetter to set it into the style of the journal, into the page layout and that kind of thing. We can go backwards and forwards with the typesetter just to get everything sitting right on the page. And then it goes off to Thomson. So we have an excellent relationship with Thomson, who print and distribute the journal for us for free. and that's
Right.
partnership's been going on for quite a while, and that's really beneficial for us, obviously. So they get it printed and then distributed, and again, that process can take a few weeks. So yeah, it is a long process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you both mentioned a couple of different kind of, I guess, onto the word in the process. So you talked about typesetting, I think, Robin, and Fiona, you were talking about proofreading. So are there specific, do you think of it in stages that the journal goes through?
I'll take that one, Fiona. Yes, definitely. And I noticed that you, Carolyn, mentioned that a journal you'd worked on, you did really meticulous and laborious proofreading after it came back from the typesetters. We don't tend to do that. We've used these typesetters for a long time and they're very good, but we do definitely check everything. We tend to divide those tasks up. So say I do the copy editing of the articles, then Fiona will check the typesetting when it comes back to make sure, and we both kind of double check what each other has done, but we do take charge of a particular aspect of it. But yes, we definitely look at it in those terms with the process. And as Fiona said, Thomson is fantastic. They not only do the printing for nothing, but they also do the distribution for us. So they do all the mail out of the issues, which is a terrific for them to do that. We do send the proofs off to Hein to go online, but Thomson does the actual distribution of the print journal. Carolyn, you're dropping in and out. I can't hear you at all now.
No, I can't hear you either, Carolyn.
Ah, that's frustrating. Phil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I can hear you now.
Would you be able
to... So we can hear you now, Carolyn.
Oh, that's frustrating. Sorry about that. I was just going to ask if it's always the same months that the journal is published in.
Yes, we try very hard, but we're normally, so the June issue will probably go out in July. We despite our best efforts, it's normally about a month behind, but we do have ostensibly a March, June, September and December issue. We try our hardest.
I think that we should move to a seasonal issue, so that gives us a bit more breathing room.
That's always good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were talking about Hein. So, so I know it's fairly recently, well, probably a while ago now, gone on to Hein Online. But so you still produce it in both print and online formats?
Yes, we do. So we do have print subscribers, so people who subscribe to the print issue, and that is often law firms, universities, have quite a few overseas subscribers as well. So it still goes out to them in hard copy, but we also put it up online through Hein. They offered to do that for us as well, which is another great benefit for us. And it's exactly the same document that goes up on Hein as is sent out in print. And we were also able to make that available to all of ALA membership, so that they can access the journal online that way, which is a really great benefit, I think, and just increases the readership of the journal, and it really makes it available to the people who it's for, who are the Law Librarians of Australia.
No,
absolutely. I think it's fantastic. It's available on Hein. So,
can I just add to that? It's Robin. It's always been on Hein, but only available to Hein subscribers. So having the access for ALA members was a wonderful thing that Hein did for us, but also what we did with Hein is get them to remove the remove the 3-year embargo. There used to be a 3-year embargo on the issues on Hein. That's now gone. So we've up-to-date issues there. So that's a very big advancement. And the other thing that's happening with the print versus online is during our stint as co-editors, one of our aims, which we will achieve, is to get the journal completely online only. So we will eventually stop print subscriptions and make it a completely online journal. And we hope to have that hosted on the ALA website. So I don't know if any of you ever read. I don't know if any of you ever read the Canadian review, our equivalent in Canada, and that's completely online, freely available. It is still on Hine and indexed. It's very important still to have it on a database that indexes the articles. So we'll keep it on Hine, and we'll print a few issues just for historic purposes and archive purposes. But that's our intention.
Okay. And so moving on to, you mentioned, Fiona, about sourcing the articles for the journal and maybe tapping people on the shoulder. How do you go about getting articles for the journal? Do you get many people just sending them in to you, or is it more you have to kind of go out and get articles to people to contribute articles?
Well, I'll let Robin answer that because no one can say no to Robin, so she does the shoulder tapping.
So one great thing about us as co-editors is that we've both got very different skill sets, and I need Fiona's skill sets big time. But one of mine is that I can tap people on the shoulder, and look, I do get told no, but not very often. And I've got to put a plug in here for the absolute importance of conferences, international conferences, local conferences, getting your name out there, having people know you, and then it is like personally know you, and it is so much easier once you know people to ask them to contribute. And I think that's, again, I mean, there are a million reasons that conferences and other networking opportunities are vital for our profession, but that is certainly one of them. So no, we do not get many people offering unsolicited. We've had 2 or 3 we've now done 6 issues and working on our 7th, and we've had about 3 people in that time actually offering to contribute articles. So as Fiona said before, we kind of work out what we'd like in this issue and a theme or particular things we want focused on, and then we go out and tap people on the shoulder. And that's the way we kind of do it. I think it's important to note the journal has changed significantly since it started all those years ago, 30-something years ago. It used to be the way that law librarians in Australia communicated pre-internet. So there were lots and lots of articles on how to do research, that kind of thing in particular topics or using particular resources. And they were super useful, and that was all obviously using print-based tools. So the journal was heavily subscribed back then, and it really had its place in that kind of communication. That, of course, is just not really necessary anymore. So it's kind of changed its focus over the time. So it's much more now I'd call a trade journal, a professional journal, and so it's not so much substance. We do try to get at least a couple of articles that are substantive into each issue, but they're not so much on the themes of research and things like that they used to be. And since the ALA News, which used to be on the website, is no longer, we incorporate what used to be in the news in the journal as well. So it's state or divisional news, member profiles, etc. And we do have people sourcing those. I think Phil's responsible for the member profiles and Emma's responsible for the state news. But generally it's us. And we also, so it's us reaching out most of the time.
Yeah, I love reading the state news actually, because I look through it to see all the names that I recognise from people. So I must admit I do like reading that also.
And that's something that's missing now from that was in the earlier editions, is that so-and-so moved from here to here. And I read one where so-and-so's leaving to have a baby and all that kind of really personal stuff, which is I think what we're all interested in.
Yeah, it was lovely. And I think I think what we're trying to do too with this one is to actually bring it back to being quite personal and newsy, but also to be stored for archival and historic purposes. So, for example, the survey Fiona and I put out yesterday, that's kind of ephemera, what we're asking for. But if we record that in the journal, it's there for posterity, because websites disappear, email lists disappear. And I know when in 2009, when the book on the history of Arla was being written, the authors of that book relied almost exclusively on what was written in the journal, and also minutes of meetings and things like that. So we need to record our organisation as it moves forward. And I think the journal is the perfect place to do that, because it will always exist as long as the association exists.
Yep, absolutely. So if people did want to contribute to the journal, do you have any suggestions for, kind of tips how they might go about that?
Yes, make sure it's AGLC compliant. If you reference like a librarian should, attribute everything and cite in AGLC. The thing that takes me the longest is to try to find things to support unsupported statements, which is very unscholarly, and also to make them AGLC compliant. I tend to do that because rather than bouncing things backwards and forwards to the authors. But if I could put a plug, if anyone wants to see how something should be written, have a look at Larissa Reed's article that she wrote, her conference report that she wrote after being at the AALL conference last year. It is an absolute gem. I didn't have to touch it, and I wish everybody would write like that.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I totally appreciate AGLC compliance. It takes a bit to do, but it's really, really important. Okay.
And I mean, also, so, I think we should say that we are really keen to have any suggestions or ideas from anyone about what we should put in the journal. Like, we see the journal as the voice of the membership, and so if you want to hear something or read something, let us know, and we can go about sourcing people who know about it. Or if you're working on a project that you think's interesting, write it down, let us know, and we're always happy to include.
And I would add to that too that a common complaint, which has always come from law firm librarians, is that the journal has not been relevant to them. And when we first took over as editors, we put out a plea to law firm librarians in particular, because both of us work in different sectors, to let us know what's important to them. A, volunteer to write something. That's never happened. But B, let us know what you'd like written about. So if there's been a change to the corporations law that's super important to law firms, I've got on tap academics in the law school who would be happy to write articles on substantive issues such as that. But we don't get those kind of requests, and I wish we did. So, we would love to make it as relevant as possible. Because I'm in the university sector, I don't know what's relevant to law firm librarians. And so it tends to have a very researchy, uni kind of focus for that reason. And that's just because we don't get contributions or suggestions from firms.
So we'll have to spruik this up when we put the recording up on the website, I think. And that was the other thing I was going to ask about, the length of articles. Does an article have to be a certain number of words for you to accept it, or doesn't really matter? It could be a shorter article or a longer one?
The answer to that is it doesn't matter. There are restrictions written on the website, but I think again that harks back to the day when there were lots of people submitting articles. Not everything was accepted. And I think the journal used to be heavily contributed to. Those days are gone. I think people are far too busy, or whatever is going on now, they just don't contribute like they used to. So we are not as fussy about what we accept. Of course, we wouldn't accept anything that we thought just didn't fit the brief, but we as far as length is concerned, no. And so we get some long articles, particularly conference reports, and I think that it's lovely to get very conference reports that have got a strong narrative theme in them, which reminds me, that was something I didn't mention before, everybody who gets a scholarship to go to a conference from ALA, it's part of the deal when you get a scholarship that you write a conference report for the journal, so that's where they come from. So no, I think if people have got no, we are, I mean, we wouldn't want something that was 20,000 words, but we certainly are very flexible, and we're also very flexible about getting short articles, because often it's much easier for people to write a page than it is to write something that's 5 pages long.
For sure, absolutely. Okay, so moving on, you were talking before, Robin, about skill sets. Do you each have like preferred tasks that you like to do? I suppose that's what's meant by skill sets, yeah?
Yeah, I think we both have just naturally fallen into different roles, and I guess it's really important if you're co-editing that you must really know your co-editor well. Fiona and I actually worked in the same office together when we started doing this. Fiona has since moved on, but we had a very strong working relationship, which has held us in very good stead, and we both knew what each other's strengths were. So it just seems to have happened that I do a lot of the, reaching out for people to write, although Fiona's doing more of that now that she's been going to conferences and meeting people. But I also seek the advertising, and I also are in contact mostly with the publishers. We have a regular column called Vendor Viewpoint that's the vendors write, and so I do a lot of that kind of thing, and then I tend to do most of the copy editing and write the editorials. Fiona does the bulk of the back end work, and that is, Fiona, you might want to talk about what you've done, what that involves.
Sure. So I usually do the end sort of process. So getting all the articles in order, sending them off to the typesetter, liaising with the typesetter, and then sending them on to the printer, and that side of it. I've also done worked on the invoices for each year's subscriptions, and the last couple of months have been spent battling with banks and bank accounts and all those kind of things, as we moved from a bank account which didn't allow us to do online banking, and a software on a 15-year-old laptop for our accounts, and we've finally moved them onto all online and all linked in with the ALA association, and that's been a big effort, but obviously going to make life much easier for us and editors to come. So now we can send out our invoices electronically and all those kind of things. So that I've spent a lot of time sorting all that out.
Absolutely, I can imagine. Battling with the banks can be quite a challenge.
Yes.
And just to add to that, just to give you a snapshot of what it used to be like, with the invoicing from the 15-year-old laptop, people used to pay by cheque. For those of you under 50 who are listening and don't know what that is, I can explain later. But that was a nightmare. And when we paid something by cheque, we had to have it countersigned. So if you had at one point there was an editor in Victoria and a business manager in Perth, and cheques had to literally be posted to each other to countersign in order to make a payment. Complete nightmare, and completely 1975. And so Fiona has dragged us out of 1975 and into 2020, and we can now do all of that online. And we do have any payments that need to be made, Fiona and I can countersign them online, and Phil, as the treasurer, also has access to that.
Yeah, and that's, as you say, that's such a necessary thing, because otherwise it's just time consuming, and probably things went missing in the mail, and
absolutely.
Yeah. So my next question was actually, and nearly to the end of the questions, if people do have questions they want to ask, I'm nearly at the end of the questions I'm asking. What challenges does the role bring? So you've kind of already talked about that a fair bit, but was there anything you wanted to add?
Well, really, just to reiterate that it is time consuming, but please, anyone who's thinking of maybe being an editor in the future, please don't let that put you off. It is a really fulfilling role, but it is time consuming. As soon as one issue is finished, we're kind of on to the next one, so it's never ending. Thinking of topics, but Fiona's always got brilliant ideas about that. And getting contributions, I think, is quite challenging. But some of our big challenges we've met, and as Fiona talked about with the banking and things like that. So, and we do have plans, as I said, about getting the journal online and other things that we want to do. We would like to have more indexing done on some of the big indexing databases. So we've still got things we want to do during our tenure, but those probably are the biggest challenges.
And I think, look, you've already talked about this a fair bit, but have there been any changes you've introduced since taking on the role? But yeah, I think you've already covered that a bit.
Yeah, we've mentioned a few there. So removed the Hein 3-year embargo and made it accessible to all ALA members. That's been really positive changes, I think. We started printing in colour, which is very exciting. So, and that's why we encourage any photos people have to include with their articles. That was especially good for the 50th anniversary issue to have some colour photos in there. For the June issue coming up, we're going to include the photos that were submitted for the Picture This competition that Anastasia organised, where people's working from home. So yeah, we're going to get those in the journal as well. And again, the whole banking issue. I know we keep going on about that, but it was such a saga, and it's good to have got that changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and some of the things that Robin mentioned, just the change in focus of the journal from being purely like a research scholarly type journal more to a news and update kind of articles and professional articles. I think that's been a big change as well.
Okay, absolutely.
And yeah. Can I just add quickly to that? We've changed quite a few of the columns. So we now have, apart from we have state news and the member profile, we've also introduced the vendor column, which I think I spoke about before, so that each issue a vendor gets to have their say on various things. We try to keep it not being a sales pitch, but of course that creeps in. But that's okay. We have got a new column which we introduced on open access research resources, which I write. We do try not to write much of the content ourselves, because that would just make the job way too big. But we do take on a few of them ourselves. There is a tech tapas column each issue about various techie things which Fiona writes. From the archives, which is looking back to a journal issue or a year of journal issues in the past, just to see how things have changed and how they've stayed the same. Fiona writes that one. And the books, we used to have book reviews of law books, and we made a big decision not to do that anymore. The person who used to be the book editor, the book review editor, struggled to get people to submit book reviews, really struggled. And so we've changed that completely to be no longer about law books, but about books about law libraries and librarianship and libraries in general. And I think that works really well. And we don't do reviews of them. We just basically say they're out there. And I think that's been a positive move as well. And we also have we've added to our stable of international contributors. So we always did have a few international contributors, but which has waxed and waned over the years. But we had a wonderful Canadian contributor. So these overseas contributors write about what's going on in their own profession, in their own country. And it could be about what's going on in their association or in law librarianship in general. And we had a wonderful Canadian contributor, Nancy McCormack, who very sadly died last year. So we have to get a new Canadian. And we have lost our UK correspondent as well, because she's on leave from her law firm job in the UK, and as you can imagine, that's pretty awful for her. So, but we've got someone from New Zealand who's new. We've got someone from Southeast Asia. She's based in Singapore, who's new, and we've got someone from the US who's new. So we'll be able to get a really good overview of what's going on overseas as well. And we're increasing the amount of people who are involved in that as well.
Fantastic. So it sounds like there's lots of things bubbling away, just like with the profession, she says profoundly. Oh, okay,
Exactly.
so my last question is this the first time there've been joint editors? So you talked before about there was an editorial board, but I'm just interested if this is the first time there's been the two editors.
No, from memory, it's happened twice before. I know many years ago, I think it was Joanna Fear and someone else from Federal Court in Queensland who were joint editors. I could be wrong on the details, but that was some years ago. And I think there have been one lot of joint editors ever since then. So it's an unusual thing to have joint editors, but without an editorial board and without a business manager, I think it's vital that there are two. And I think those two, as much as possible, are co-editors, not, you know, an editor and a sub-editor or something like that, because I think we are, despite having divided the tasks up between us, we are very much a democracy and both contribute equally to the way the journal goes. The ALA itself has ultimate oversight, but they have no involvement in content. That's completely the editor's decisions. So it's a lot of responsibility for us. And I feel like it would be quite a lonely, apart from incredibly time consuming, I think it would be a bit of a lonely thing to be doing if you were on your own. It's terrific to have Fiona to bash ideas around with and just divvy up the work. I think it's, I couldn't do it without her. I couldn't do it on my own.
Yes,
no,
definitely. Two is much better. Yeah.
And we've actually said to the board that next time, so we'll be stepping down after issue 3 of 2021, which seems like years away, although I'll be a bit sad when it happens. But when we do, we have strongly suggested to the board that when it's advertised next time, that it is for co-editors.
No, I totally appreciate. I mean, the journal that I was on the editorial board for, and that was, you know, a board different to what you are doing at the moment. You needed to have people that exactly you ran things past, and what do you think of this, and how does this work, and you know, what should we do? Yeah, so, and I'm too tactful to ask, you said, Robin, it's a democracy. What happens if one of you votes yes and the other one votes no? But I'm too tactful to ask that, so we won't go there.
Well, it's
Robin
actually
never.
So not true.
No, so not true. No,
it's never happened. I've got to say, it's never happened. And I think that's you know, and I keep saying this, but you have got to have a great relationship with the person who you co-edit with. Yeah, and I think Larissa would agree with that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, and I'm hoping I can do this, is go and open the microphones up. And if anyone does have a question, hang on, I'll just unmute everybody. I'm hoping, and in a minute it will magically unmute everybody, and then feel free or send me the question through chat. It doesn't actually unmute people at this point, but still. So hang on, try that again. Unmute all. No, it's not letting me do that. Sorry, everyone, it's not letting me unmute. I'm not sure why.
Caroline, we can unmute ourselves now. So what it's done is it's turned off the organisational control. So people, if you need to ask a question, you can unmute yourself.
Beautiful.
I have one. I wrote it in the chat, but now that I'm unmute, you guys mentioned that you sort of pick the topics per issue a little bit in advance. Do you have any idea of what sort of articles you're looking for in the next couple of issues, so that if people want to write something or think of something to write, they can have a think and then maybe send you a pitch?
Fiona, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. At this stage, no, we don't have any plans for the next 2 issues. We're quite focused on getting June done. obviously the September issue was going to be related to the conference, now being postponed until next year. So, but yeah, we might put out a call in the next couple of weeks when we get our heads around what we might put out. And yeah, if we can flag that early, it gives people time to think about any contributions that they might be able to make.
And we do often have we always have a kind of a running sheet for ideas for the next couple of issues. And for example, if I ask someone to write something for this issue and they don't have time, but they promise it for the next issue, that will just go on the list for the next issue. So we're kind of a little bit ahead of the game, but not far. And was that Kate who asked that question?
Yeah,
Oh,
was.
of course it
Hi,
was.
Kate.
You know, I'm one of these people who struggle to get my column in on time. So
Correct.
it is awful to be nagged. The journal editors, I must say, are really good at gently nagging, not coming off too strong, but just gently, have you done it yet? Are you there yet?
Actually, we didn't mention that there's always a president's column, and I think again it's a great historic snapshot of what the association is doing, because the president's column talks about what's been going on in the last 3 months and what's going to be going on. So I think that's again, it's a great way of the president having some recording of what they've been done that for historic purposes.
It also helps when you're going to write the yearly report at the end of the year.
Exactly.
I love how you say prehistoric, Robin. Does anyone else have questions?
I've got a question. Have you ever had, sorry, it's Phil Mullen here. Do you ever have a controversial journal article that caused dramas outside like law libraries?
Oh, we haven't had controversial. I think, well, as far as controversial as we get is the authorised reports versus unauthorised reports debate that went on in the last issue. But as far as like outside law libraries controversies, not that I'm aware of, Fiona.
No, nothing comes to mind. I do know there was an incident where someone had, I don't know who wrote the article, it may have been Robin, it included a swear word and I asterisked it out because I thought our readership was far too prim and proper to be having swear words in.
I feel like in my defence, Fiona,
yes.
I feel like it was a swear word that was in a quotation. Because
yes, it may have been.
All of those, all of you who know me would know I would never put a swear word into anything. So I think it was in a quotation, and Fiona edited it. But no, Phil, have you got examples of the kind of thing you mean?
No, I don't, but I just thought writing an article is always controversial. You know, no matter what you write on, there's always someone who's got an opinion there.
Of course, but we certainly have never had anyone writing in and saying that was rubbish what was written and why did you let that person write something? No, we haven't.
Okay, thank you.
And when we did the controversial issue on the authorised reports, the unauthorised, we just tried to make that very balanced. So we had someone who was passionately on one side and VLEX Justice passionately, as you can imagine, on the other side. And I think that worked really well. We could never be accused of being biased.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And true librarians are never biased. They're just, you know, in the middle. Any other questions? I have an idea for an article that might be interesting.
Oh, go.
Well, I was just thinking when you were talking about the historical looking at the president's columns, it would be interesting to to compare columns from, like, perhaps when the journal was first published, or the column was first published, you know, back however many years, and compare it to a column from this year. Kind of look at the two, you know, next to each other, because I'm sure there'd be similarities and there'd obviously be differences.
There you go, Fiona, for your From the Archives column, looking at presidents' reports.
Yes, oh, indeed.
And we try to pick a From the Archives issue that is relevant. So the last one I think Fiona did was looking back at the last time the conference was in Canberra. Well, how did that work out for us? The conference isn't going ahead in Canberra this year, but the intention was there, and that's why we picked that. And for this one, we're looking back at 2008 with the GFC and how law libraries coped with that, which is, as you would know, you know, we can compare that with what's going on now. So I think, you know, we try to bring some relevance to the From the Archives.
Which,
and
considering have just announced that Australia's in recession, is very useful. It's very timely.
Yeah. Look, if I could just put a plug in here, if there aren't any more questions just at the moment, for people who might think about wanting to take this on, we will stand down after issue 3. And Fiona and I both thought it would be a great idea, and we will of course run this by the board, for our replacements, our successors, to come in while we're doing the last issue, so that they can get a feel for how it is done and see how it works from a practical perspective, to do a really good kind of handover. But I do think it is a really rewarding thing to do. It's made me read every single issue of the Australian Law Librarian, so I have a much better understanding of our own profession and where we've come from and where we're going, and I think it's a very rewarding thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it is.
But we're not putting our hands up for a second term.
Yes. Okay, so does anyone, Robin or Fiona, is there anything else you wanted to add, or any final questions before I close the session?
I did just want to say,
Fiona.
yeah, thank you to everyone who contributed to the survey that we put out yesterday. So we were just wanting to gather people's experiences of being in lockdown, working from home, and that kind of thing. And we've had a lot of responses via the survey, which has been really good. And I'm going to incorporate all that into an article for the next issue. So yeah, we just really love people contributing and
we do, because really it's not, as Fiona said before, it's not supposed to be the Fiona and Robin show. It is supposed to be representing our entire association. So we, you know, that's why we want contributions from all sectors and all people. And I think but I tell you what, it goes to show, I put out an email, got no responses. Fiona puts out a survey on SurveyMonkey, bang, 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 bang. We got responses within like minutes. It was amazing. So surveys are the way to go, obviously.
Robin, Fiona, is that survey still open? Because I actually never received an email about it via the e-list. So I'm wondering if you could resend it.
Sure.
Fiona, can you send that to Kate? We did send one out on the ANZ list, so I don't know why you would not have got that, President.
And it never arrived. A lot of my emails aren't arriving, actually. But no. I'm just thinking, if my email from the ANZ list never arrived, maybe some other people. So maybe just maybe put it out on the ANZ list again.
We did 2 yesterday. Kate, if you want to email Fiona with your personal email address, maybe that would work.
Yes, and if anyone else is listening who didn't get that survey email and wanted to fill it in, then
that'd be
maybe
great.
Fiona, if you could let everyone maybe know your email address, then we could email you.
Yep. So you can email. The email address is journaleditor@alla ALLA.asn.au, journaleditor@alla.asn.au. yeah, if you hadn't received that link, send me an email and I can send you the link. And it's going to stay open for a while. It's not going to close. It doesn't have a close date on it, so we'll keep it open for as long as we can.
Right. Okay, well, look, thanks, Robin and Fiona. That's been really interesting. And yeah, sort of, it's such an eye-opener, isn't it? Any area that you look at, there's always so much that people don't kind of appreciate just when you're looking in. You know, there's so much involved with these different tasks. So thanks for all the work that both of you do.
One last thing from me, it's Robin. We do get paid. Can you believe that? Arla pays us the huge sum between us of $5,000 a year. Is that right, Fiona?
Yes.
5,000, yeah.
No, that's not right. It's 3,000.
Isn't it? 3,000. Yeah. 3,000 between us. Or 3,000 each.
Thinking. No, 3,000.
Anyway, it's a huge amount of money, and I'm going to be able to go and live in Marbella on that. But it is, look, it's a token recognition, and I appreciate it. I'm being facetious, but we do appreciate it because there is a lot of work involved, and I think they do need to give a bit of a sweetener by paying that person. It's always been a paid position and one of the few paid positions in Arla, so we do appreciate that.
All right, that's fantastic. Look, I might close off at this point. So again, thanks, Robin and Fiona. That's been really interesting. And perhaps if people do have questions they think of later on, if they use that email, Fiona, that you gave out, they could shoot through perhaps a question about contributing if someone wanted to, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yep, we'd love to hear from anyone.
Thanks for organising that, Carolyn. And also, can you send me a list of who was there, because I can't see the participants?
Yep. Yes, I should do.
Wonderful. That. Thank you, Carolyn.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.